Three countries just signed a piece of paper promising to treat an attack on one as an attack on all. A team of astronomers just claimed a tiny handful of galaxies lit up the entire universe. And Taiwan just unveiled a shiny new bullet train that goes exactly as fast as the old one. All three stories are really about the same thing: the gap between the headline and what the fine print actually says. Let's start with the one that could reshape the Middle East, or could turn out to be words on a page. Today, in Mecca, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, and Turkey signed what's being called the Mecca Joint Defense Agreement. The core of it is a single heavy sentence: an armed attack against any one of the three shall be regarded as an attack against them all. If that language sounds familiar, it should. It's the same principle as NATO's Article 5, the mutual defense clause that binds the Western alliance. Three of the most significant militaries in the Muslim world just linked arms. Let me give you the pieces, because on paper this is genuinely formidable. Turkey has the second largest military in NATO, behind only the United States. Pakistan is the only nuclear-armed Muslim nation on Earth. And Saudi Arabia is one of the world's top oil exporters, with the money to bankroll an alliance. This didn't come from nowhere. It builds on a bilateral Saudi-Pakistan defense pact from September 2025, now widened to bring Turkey in. And the backdrop is a regional war with Iran that's been grinding on since February, during which, according to CNN's reporting, Iran repeatedly struck targets inside Saudi Arabia, including civilian infrastructure and energy facilities. And just this past Friday, the Houthis hit a Saudi base in Yemen and a Saudi border region. So the context is real fear, real missiles, real attacks. And then, on the very same day, the second half of the story, the Trump administration announced its 8th round of Iran sanctions this year. And I want to give you the specifics, because this is where it gets interesting for anyone who follows the money. And it runs straight through Asia. According to CBS News and the Treasury Department, the sanctions targeted Iran's banking system directly. They named Shar Bank, plus 2 Dubai-based exchange houses, Titan Exchange and Alps International, which Treasury says helped that bank retrieve oil revenue from major Iranian exporters, including the National Iranian Oil Company. Treasury alleges one of those exchanges was holding tens of millions of dollars on the bank's behalf. And here's the part that hits close to home for a lot of you watching. They also designated a cluster of shell companies spread across Hong Kong, Singapore, and Dubai, used to funnel the payments through intermediary accounts. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent's line was, roughly, that every facilitator keeping the regime afloat is putting a target on its own back. So you've got the carrot and stick, or really the shield and sword, on the same day, an alliance to deter Iran militarily, and a financial campaign to strangle it economically. Now let me put on the critical hat, and I'll try to be fair to every side here, because this is a serious geopolitical moment, and it deserves more than cheerleading or dismissal. Here's the case for taking the pact seriously. For years, the Gulf states have relied almost entirely on the United States for security. And there is growing doubt, this is CNN's framing, not mine, about whether Washington can still be relied on to protect its oil-rich allies. So this alliance is Saudi Arabia buying insurance, a powerful new layer of protection beyond the Americans. That's what states do when they're nervous about their protector. But here's the skeptical case, and I think it's strong. A mutual defense treaty is only worth the willingness to actually honor it. And the track record here is thin. Consider this uncomfortable fact, reported by Foreign Policy. Pakistan already had a mutual defense deal with Saudi Arabia signed last September. And when Iran launched its recent attacks on the kingdom, Pakistan did not respond militarily. It has also downplayed the idea that its nuclear umbrella would ever extend to protect allies. So the flagship member, the nuclear one, has already shown that an attack on one is an attack on all, has an asterisk on it when the moment actually comes. And Iran, for its part, was utterly dismissive. A senior Iranian official's response, per CNN, was essentially, a paper agreement with Turkey and Pakistan will not bring the Saudis security, just as decades of leaning on the Americans didn't. Now that's Iran talking, and they have every reason to belittle it. But the point cuts. because it's the same point the skeptics are making. And here's the deeper tension nobody in the official statements wants to say out loud. Look at who's in this pact. Pakistan shares a border with Iran and has a large Shiite population it has to keep calm. Turkey shares a border with Iran too, and while they compete, they also cooperate on things like Kurdish separatism. Neither Pakistan nor Turkey actually wants a hot war with Iran. They have every incentive to keep this conflict from spiraling. So, you have a mutual defense alliance, where two of the three members are strongly motivated never to trigger it. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Maybe it's pure deterrence, a bluff so intimidating it never gets called. But a shield that all its holders are desperate never to use is a very particular kind of shield. My take, and I'll keep it about the reasoning. The announcement is a genuinely significant diplomatic signal. Three major powers publicly aligning is not nothing, and the symbolism alone shifts the regional chessboard. But signals and slogans are cheap, and treaties are only tested in the one moment everyone hopes never comes. The honest position is to treat this as a serious statement of intent, whose actual value is completely unproven, and to notice that the same week these three signed a defensive pact, the country with the actual long-range firepower, the United States, reached for its financial weapons instead of its military ones. There may be a message in that too. The question I'll leave you with: is this the birth of a real alliance, or the most heavily armed group chat in history? We won't know until it's tested, and everyone involved is praying it never is. Now, from alliances forged in fear to something forged in the first light of the universe, let me take you back about 13 billion years, because astronomers just made a claim that is either one of the coolest findings of the year or a headline that got ahead of its evidence, possibly both. The topic is something called cosmic reionization, and let me set it up simply, because it's one of the great unsolved chapters in the story of everything. After the Big Bang, once things cooled down, the universe went through a period we poetically call the cosmic dark ages. It was filled with a fog of neutral hydrogen gas, opaque, murky. Then at some point roughly 600 million to a billion years after the Big Bang, something switched the lights on. Powerful ultraviolet radiation flooded out and ionized that hydrogen fog, stripped the electrons off the atoms, and turned the universe transparent into the clear cosmos we can see through today. That transformation is called reionization. And the trillion-dollar question astronomers have argued about for decades is, what did it? What produced enough radiation to burn off the fog of the entire universe? There have been two main camps. Camp 1, it was a huge number of tiny, fake galaxies, each leaking just a little radiation. But so numerous that together they got the job done. Democracy, basically. Camp 2, it was a small number of special galaxies leaking radiation very efficiently, an oligarchy of galaxies. And a new study, using data from the James Webb Space Telescope, just came down hard on the side of the oligarchy. Here's what the team actually did. They compiled JWST spectra from 1,428 galaxies, spanning a period from roughly 500 million to a billion years after the Big Bang. For each one, they estimated how many ionizing photons it produces, and how many of those photons actually escape the galaxy to go do the work of ionizing the universe. And the result? The galaxies split into two groups. About 20% are strong leakers, and the other 80% are weak leakers. But here's the punchline. That minority of strong leakers, just 20%, produces around 87% of all the ionizing photons that reach intergalactic space. In other words, a small, leaky few lit up the cosmos for everyone. It's a genuinely striking, almost poetic picture. Most galaxies barely contributed, and a handful did the heavy lifting. Now, you know I'm not going to just hand you the wonder without the fine print. And here the fine print really matters. First and most important, this is a preprint. It was posted to the arXiv server on July 24th. And, as of now, it has not completed peer review. That's not a knock. Preprints are how modern science moves fast. And this is a respected team using real data. But you, the viewer, should know the difference between posted online and vetted by the field. The headline treats it as settled. It's a strong opening argument. Second, and this is the part I find genuinely important to understand, the single most crucial number in this whole field is something they cannot measure directly. It's called the escape fraction, the percentage of ionizing photons that actually escape a galaxy. And here's the catch. Straight from the researchers, for galaxies this far away, beyond a certain distance, those escaping photons get absorbed by the very hydrogen fog we're studying, so they never reach our telescopes. Direct detection is, in their words, virtually impossible. So the escape fraction has to be inferred, estimated indirectly, through clever proxies like the strength of certain emission lines. Which means this beautiful 20% did 87% result rests on a foundation of sophisticated estimation, not direct measurement. And earlier work, an AAS NOVA write-up from an earlier sample, estimated something more like 25% of galaxies were leaking. So the exact numbers are still very much in motion. My take, this is a legitimately exciting result, and a perfect example of why you should love science and distrust science headlines at the same time. The finding that a leaky fuel drove reionization is a compelling, well-argued hypothesis built on the best data we have. It is not a proven fact. The researchers themselves are careful about that, and the certainty lives entirely in the headline, not in the paper. Hold it the way the scientists do, as a strong, beautiful, testable idea that the next few years of JWST work will either confirm or complicate. The universe was lit by a leaky fuel. And that probably is not a weakness of the science. It's the honesty of it, all right? From the edge of the observable universe, let me bring you all the way down to a train platform in Taiwan, because the last story is a small, concrete lesson in reading a headline carefully. And it's one where the truth is actually better than the hype. Taiwan just took delivery of its first next-generation high-speed train. The first train set arrived on July 30th. It's called the N700 ST, and it's built by a Japanese consortium of Hitachi and Toshiba, based on Japan's N700S Shinkansen. The S stands for Supreme, which is one of the most advanced bullet train platforms in the world. Taiwan ordered 12 of these train sets, 144 cars in total, in a deal worth around 124 billion Japanese yen. They'll run the main north-south line between Taipei and Kaohsiung. And here's a charming detail. The train's chairman compared its streamlined nose to a platypus, so the platypus trains are coming to Taiwan. Now, the way a story like this usually gets told, and honestly the way your intuition wants to read it, is Taiwan gets faster new bullet trains. And here's where I want to be precise, because the facts are actually more interesting than the lazy version. These new trains will operate at a maximum speed of 300 kilometers per hour. That is a genuinely fast train. But here's the thing the breathless framing misses. That's the exact same top speed as the existing fleet. Taiwan's high-speed rail has been running at 300 kilometers per hour since it opened back in 2007. The new trains are not faster, not by a single kilometer per hour. So if they're not faster, what's the point? And this is the part I actually want to celebrate, because it's a lesson in what real infrastructure progress looks like versus what makes a flashy headline. The upgrade isn't about speed at all. It's about capacity, reliability, and efficiency. The new trains are designed to boost peak period capacity by about 25%. That's the number that actually matters to a commuter standing on a crowded platform during rush hour. They use a more efficient traction system built on silicon carbide components, which cuts energy consumption and makes the equipment lighter. And they have a genuinely clever safety feature, a Toshiba-designed backup battery system that, in the event of a power failure, lets the train keep moving under its own power to reach a safe area, out of a tunnel, say, rather than stranding hundreds of passengers in the dark. The original fleet is nearing 2 decades of service, so this is the largest rolling stock renewal since the line opened. Here's my take, and it's the opposite of my usual skepticism, because it's earned. This is the anti-hype story. In a week full of alliances that might be bluffs and cosmic claims that might be overstated, here's a piece of news where the reality is quietly more impressive than the headline. Same top speed. Sounds boring. but moving 25% more people, using less energy, more reliably, with a battery that can carry you out of a tunnel if the power dies. That is what mature, competent engineering actually looks like. It's not sexy. It doesn't set a record. It just makes hundreds of thousands of daily journeys a little better. And it does it without pretending to be something it isn't. And notice the pattern I keep coming back to. The number in the headline, 300 kilometers per hour, is real, and it's completely beside the point. The story is in the fine print, and the fine print is genuinely good news. So let me tie these three together, because they really do rhyme. A defense pact whose headline says attack one, attack all, but whose fine print is a history of members who didn't show up. A cosmic discovery whose headline says a few galaxies lit the universe, but whose fine print says we're estimating a number we can't directly measure, and it's not peer-reviewed yet. And a bullet train whose headline screams 300 kilometers per hour, but whose fine print, the boring part about capacity and batteries, is the actual story and the good one. So here's what I'll leave you with tonight. The headline is designed to make you feel something: impressed, afraid, excited, and then move on. The fine print is where the truth lives, and the truth is almost always more complicated, more uncertain, and occasionally, like with that train, more genuinely good than the headline let on. So read the fine print on the train, and on everything anyone in power hands you this week, wrapped in a confident, round, memorable number. The number is the bait. The fine print is the meal.